So I was thinking about air, and I was thinking about birds, and then I walk in here today and lo and behold, we got two of them that came in. It's gonna be cool. Yeah, it's kind of cool that there were two birds, so I felt like maybe they're lovebirds. And Keishu and I are gonna go on a little trip pretty soon. Very short trip, but we're celebrating our 6th-year blessing anniversary. So that's coming up in about a week, March 23rd. So to me, they were the lovebirds. But you know, you can interpret them however they mean the most to you, I guess, right? But yeah, so I wanted to talk about breathing and air. And I found this guy, my dad. Actually, it was my brother-in-law from Nepal who showed it to my dad, who showed it to me. There's this guy, his name is Wim Hof. Wim Hof. He's, I think, Dutch or something.
Yeah.
And he has a new breathing method. And it's kind of specific, and I would look like a clown trying to demonstrate it for you, because it's very deep in, very deep out, and it goes on, it's pretty intense. But through this breathing method, he has learned to kind of supercharge his cells in his body and his mind. And this guy is pulling off phenomenal things, literal superhuman abilities just from the breathing. So what he does is you'll get it really fast. He does breathing and then he jumps into a cold shower. That's his training program. If you can do breathing and jump into a cold shower, and train yourself not to even flinch at all when you get into the cold shower. You condition yourself to handle the cold. It boosts your immune system, it boosts all these things. And it's so weird, right? This guy started attempting extreme things and he pulls them off. He can swim under ice water, like Arctic ice water.
Wow.
Actually, the first time he tried it, he was almost fine, but his retina froze into an ice block.
Wow.
So he's like, maybe I should train harder. So he went back and did it more, and then he started succeeding, no problems. He is defying science as we speak now. He's being tested by top researchers. They bathe this guy in ice, and he can submerged in complete ice for 2 hours without his core body temperature dropping at all. Not a millimeter. It stays because of the breathing. Something's going on, and so they wrote him off as a freak of nature, right? Oh, this guy can do that. He trains other people to do it. And actually within 3 to 6 weeks, his students can do similar things. This is very simple stuff, not like 7 years of mastery. 3 weeks of practice. Just 3 or 6 weeks. So I highly recommend checking this guy out. He never gets sick. He said, I stopped getting sick because when I want to, I just charge my immune system back up. It just sounds crazy, right? It's like total, dare I say it, mind-body unity, right? Oh, my mind doesn't want to be sick today. Boom, got it. As we go on and as science gets further and further, I have the hunch that Reverend Moon's going to be proven right, and even more right, not conceptually right, but literally right about a lot of things. So we're going to see, I think, just pay attention to this guy and some of the breakthroughs coming out, that you could literally boost your immune system and even boost your adrenaline system. So scientists up till today have said you don't have control over your adrenaline system. You know, if something scary happens, your heart rate goes up and it's not in your control. What Wim Hof is doing is he can actually manipulate it on his own through breathing. So it's crazy. They give him tests where they inject a germ that would make anybody sick. They don't, it's not like guesswork. They put the germ in the guy and he still doesn't get sick. So very interesting stuff. It's the power of just concentrated breathing and the power of air, right? And it starts to make you think maybe that was the way God designed it. That we are bathed in the medicine that can heal us all the time. You know, when you get worried or when you get panicked or frustrated or anything, you start breathing shallow, right? You breathe shallow. I can't breathe. I know I've been there. Every time I'm about to step up here. But you can't breathe. You don't breathe. And actually backstage, before concerts, all the musicians, even the really experienced ones, start yawning. It's a weird thing. We're all nervous, but we start yawning. I remember that about to play for The Blessing several years ago. There was 20,000 people in Korea, and I started yawning. I'm like, I'm definitely not tired. Like, I am really anxious right now. And then I read later that the yawning comes from basically lack of oxygen. So your body reacts to that lack of oxygen and forces a yawn. Interesting, right? So when you get nervous or when you get anxious, you start breathing shallow. So one way to see this breathing exercise is sort of a manufactured self-regulation. And what's amazing is I remember this passage from a few weeks ago because I was reading it. So I'm going to read it to you. It's in the Chambumo Gyeong, right here. Some people really enjoy walking as a way to stay healthy, but I know another way to strengthen my health even without walking. I do a breathing exercise that is equivalent of pouring into a 10-mile walk all the energy that one would use to walk 1,000 miles. It involves taking in a lot when you inhale and exhaling completely. If you do this, your lungs will filter your blood better so that the freshest blood can enter your heart. If your breathing is shallow, then the freshest blood will not have a chance to reach your heart. I do this special breathing exercise. It is something I did even when I was in prison. Focusing all your energy, hold your breath tightly and then release it slow. Doing this over and over will benefit you many more times than other exercises. There is no exercise better than this. It's from True Father. No exercise better than this. Just 7 to 13 minutes is enough. When you do this, you must hold your breath. Hold it as long as you can. This exercise is for the lungs. If you hold your nose, close your mouth tightly and breathe out strongly, the air will go out through your eyes, mouth, and ears. It is a way to clean out blockages and prevent your hearing and eyesight from weakening as you grow old. This will keep you healthy as long as you live. This exercise naturally includes exercising your neck, making those muscles strong. In this way, you will not get a stuffy nose. You will be able to breathe smoothly. Try this exercise in the morning, holding your nose. Those who do it will avoid colds. I owe my own good health to knowing how to do this exercise. I mean, so many times growing up, my family would read 100K, we'd pass the book around, right? And how many times would you read something like this and kind of just nod at it, right? Glaze over. And then, years later, it's proven to be literally right. Literally right. You will avoid colds. So this is really interesting. The power of air. Its healing power. And he also talks in the next paragraph, I won't read all that, about chi energy. So breathing in kind of relates to chi energy. It's a very Eastern concept, right? And I've been thinking about Eastern medicine more and more because Eastern medicine tends to lean towards focusing on how to maintain health, whereas Western medicine uses all of its powers to diagnose problems. Billion-dollar machines to tell you what's wrong with you. But how do I stay healthy? Oh, just don't worry, we'll just keep checking, right? Come in for a checkup. We'll just keep checking to see if there's something wrong. That's it. It's not real advice for how to be healthy. Father kind of has that advice actually sprinkled throughout. And what's amazing to me is that the healthiest thing, air, is available for free. Just freely available all the time. In fact, you're just constantly consuming it anyway, even when you don't think about it. So the idea that floats into my mind this morning is just because it's free and readily available doesn't make it cheap. It's not cheap, it's valuable. Actually, our lives depend on it. But it's readily available and free. And I think likewise, parallel to that, I think our movement, and I think true parents, are trying to make their word, their truth, and the blessing readily available for everybody. We want to reach as many people as we can. And the standard of what used to constitute a member back in the 60s and 70s, like when my mom joined, is different than it is now, right? There used to be the in members, the outside members, which doesn't make sense, the B members, right? Our movement has gone through kind of an interesting figuring itself out. And the culture has changed. And we're making everything more readily available. You know, we're all being given and empowered to give the blessing. We're all empowered to create tribes and be Messiah-like figures over those tribes. It's more readily available. It's not getting narrower, it's getting wider, right? And so I think a lot of the question on our minds, especially in maybe the second generation community and others, is how do we know, how do we feel that this is valuable if we're not suffering and suffering and suffering for it? How do we place the value and feel like it's really changing our lives when no longer is there that presence of an intense central figure giving you the conditions to do something and qualify? How do we maintain the motivation to see it as something valuable? And the only explanation that you can arrive to is that the blessing cannot be getting cheaper. The blessing's standard is not getting lower. It's the grace getting stronger. Right? It's true father, true mother, proclaiming and achieving more and more, paying bigger and bigger price to allow the grace to be stronger. The air is more readily available. The air is more readily available. It does not change the value of air. It doesn't change the value of the blessing. You know, in a way, our spiritual souls kind of rely on it, just like air. Another example that flew into my mind was, this happens in the technology world too. At first, when a product comes out, it's extremely expensive. I remember my mom paid an arm and a leg, like all my parents' money pooled into one purchase to get my mom a clunky old computer that you could get for free now. In fact, somebody would pay you to take it, probably. Get this thing out of here, it's an eyesore. So, you know, technology does this too. It gets cheaper over time, or more readily available. You can go on Craigslist, you can go down the street. I mean, I'm surprised sometimes even these random little stores have a little phone section at the airport, right? But what's interesting to know is that even if the product or the device, I think of a smartphone. If a smartphone gets cheaper, that doesn't change the value of it necessarily. This thing could get you out of the wilderness with the GPS. This thing could save your life when you need to know how to cook chicken cacciatore. Saved my life a couple times when I was trying to make stew last week. Oh, looking it up. And so a phone is a phone. I mean, ask somebody who doesn't have a smartphone, they'll probably take any smartphone, right? Like, hey, I'll have one rather than none. But it's more readily available. So an image flew into my mind this week. No pun intended. Bird tweets right out when I say that. I think there's this concept that we need to, pay a lot for it to be worth something. But nature proves that that's not the case. And so what I was kind of talking to one of my Christian friends a couple weeks back, and this came up, a thought that I expressed was, actually it's kind of like the salvation is free, right? It's all about faith. The salvation is free. So to me that's like saying the smartphone is free now. It's being given to everybody, right? I mean, we have blessings in the parks. But if you want to get the full value out of this new phone you gotta have to charge the batteries. And it comes with an instruction manual on how to use all the apps inside. So I see our books, our scripture, our prayer as charging the batteries, learning how to maximize the value of this thing being given to you freely. It's important, I think, for me to see this analogy because it kind of prevents future discrepancies like, oh, well, I had to do a separation course, or, my parents told me I could only marry a second generation. And just imagine, 20 years, 30 years from now, maybe that rule will be changed again. We don't know. So, how are we going to feel like, they made me do this, but you don't have to do it? Right? That could be a sense of soreness. The way I see it again is that the grace gets stronger. And instead of casting a sense of resentment towards that, we should cast a sense of celebration. It's more available. More people's souls are going to be brought back to life, breathing the breath of life. Our job now would then be to give them the instruction manuals, the batteries, the chargers. Hey, you can get a lot out of this phone. You can get a lot more than just looking cool and posing with a dead phone. You can have a live phone. You can go GPS. You can have all the instructions on how to maximize your life, living a principled life as a blessed family. To me, this helps best kind of click in this sense that we should be as generous as possible with the blessing. We want to be as giving and as open and talk to everybody or anybody we know about it. Not that they'll understand it fully, but hopefully they'll understand it some, and that they'll find it attractive and something that they want to do. So I have a short message today. So A, just because it's free and available doesn't mean it's cheap. B, we want to give the blessing to as many people. The price is considerably lower in terms of sweat equity. The price is considerably lower than it used to be 30 years ago, but it doesn't cheapen it. We got to accompany it with the right box, instruction manual, chargers, batteries, support, hotlines, whatever. And I want you to kind of go forward with that, knowing that and this is sort of a message for even members, young and old, that may watch this later or who are not here in this room today, that no matter what your story is, no matter what journey of blessings or broken blessings or whatnot that you've had, once you pick yourself up and go through that process of becoming a committed husband and wife before God and receive the blessing, you now have the same value, the same weight, the same product, the same grace that your parents gave the earliest of early members, that your parents gave our parents. So I just want you to know that the value does not change. So thank you very much and have a great week.